Now, sometimes they will estimate, right, bang on the dollar. And you're like, cool, done, no problems, right? But more often than not, you'll have lots of deductions, which means you'll have less taxable income. So that means their estimate of total income tax is too much, right? You're like, you thought I had this much, but actually I've deducted all this amount. This is how much you should tax me, okay? So the government has accidentally overtaxed you. Does that make sense? Right? So how do they fix that?
Give it back to you.
They give it back to you in a tax refund. So here's my note, right? If the government overtaxes you, if the government overtaxes you, you will receive, you process all of your paperwork and that kind of thing, and you'll receive a tax refund.
Is that why everyone keeps their receipts like every
Yes, that is exactly right.
So like charity, isn't it? If you donate like $2 something.
Correct, that's exactly right. So the whole idea is if I've given to charity, well, that's not part of my income anymore. You shouldn't tax me on that. That's gone. I never got to use that money, okay? Now, that's if you're overtaxed. That's if your deductions are quite great, okay? But think about this for a second, right? Where did PAYG tax come from? Where did it come from? It came from my income, right? This came out of my income. But importantly, it came out of my income from a job. Right? So it's my employer which has the responsibility to say, oh, well, this is how much we're going to give you, and this is how much goes to the government. Now, hold on a second. We just established there's other kinds of income that's not from a job, right? Does this make sense? So suppose I've got like heaps and heaps of properties, right? And all this income is coming to me, or I might get income that's not from an employer, right? Maybe I like drive an Uber taxi, right? And actually, no, that's a bad example because Uber is my employer. Maybe I just drive my friends around in my Mini Cooper and I charge them a fee, right? Okay? Now, if I charge them a fee, I'm making income. Does this make sense? Should that income be taxed or not?
No, because you're a bad friend and charging.
Okay, I mean, should the government charge me tax on that?
No.
I don't think so.
Okay, now I'm not about to start a big discussion about socialism and its pros and cons, but the law is, if it's income, you need to pay tax on it. So here's what happens, right? At the reason why we keep our receipts is because what we do is we declare our deductions, right? We declare, hey, I didn't have all of this money. I actually gave it to all of these different charities, Red Cross, etc. So don't tax me on that. But at the same time, you have to declare, I made all this other income as well. Okay? So for instance, I've done work outside of school, and that has to be declared. It didn't come from my employer, it came from other sources. So I've got to say, hey, I made this money, so the government will tax me on it. Okay? Now, what happens if I don't do that?
Tax fraud.
That's called tax fraud. It's called tax evasion, right? Because what happens is like, okay, so I've collected all of this cash, right? There's no record of it, so I'm just gonna not say anything about it, and that means the government doesn't know, so they're not gonna tax me. But that's illegal, okay? So if I get found out, I'll get thrown in jail, okay? Now think about this for a second. Think. If I've got income, right? Let's suppose I do the right thing and I declare my income. So what happens to this? This is going to go up, yes? But the government only knew about this. So are they going to overtax me by the end of the year? They're going to undertax me, right? Because they've only taxed me based on the income they knew I had. And they didn't even know I had this income. Does this make sense? So if I've been undertaxed, if I have been taxed, and then I do the right thing, I declare everything, all of my income, and my deductions, then I'm not going to receive a tax refund, am I? What's going to happen?
Give them the money.
Oh, that's so.
They're really making you
I'll
not want to declare
owe
it.
extra tax, okay? And this has happened before. People, in fact not before, this happens all the time. You go through, you do all your paperwork, and you're like, oh, I owe them this amount of money. And that's not fun, but I'm just going to go out and say that, I work for a public school, right, so I work for the government. Let me finish this paragraph, not just this sentence. I really like paying taxes. Here's why, okay? I really like driving on good roads. And I really like being able to take my children to the hospital for free anytime I like. Those are really good things. I really like that my children go to school and I don't have to pay for that directly because it comes out of my tax. Okay? So, you know, like, oh wow, the government's really obsessed with, you know, getting all our tax dollars out of us. Well, the government is just an extension of us. Like, we want, trust me, you want government, right? There's plenty of places around the world that do not have government and it doesn't go well for them, okay? So, this is the whole idea. Yeah.
What is that word next to extra?
I'll owe extra tax.
It's not like a ewe as in like a sheep.
Sorry. Yeah, that's what I saw. No, I will owe.
It's so weird because in like certain countries, like you don't know taxes, like
Correct.
government's like really rich already.
Yeah, that's right. There are, for example, I think Brunei is an example of that. Like, they have this insanely rich royal family, and so they just don't charge their citizens income tax.
That's nice.
Yeah, well. Okay, now.
Is it like how?
Yeah.
Sorry, is it like how if I do like a school project and like I get all these arts and crafts or whatever, I go buy all this stuff. My parents like give me the receipt and declare that for like the school stuff.
Yes, so, I mean, in short, yes. So, for example, if I buy an object, right, which I exclusively use for work, like this is, like the reason why I have this is so that I can do my job, right?
Yeah.
Then that's actually not really part of my income, is it? No. Right? It's like, to do this job, I needed this thing. So therefore, it's like, I couldn't really, so other examples of doing that, membership fees, right? Any job you go into, you should be part of the professional association for that job, and that's an important thing. Union fees, they're all in the same kind of category. Okay?
Is it so? This is more of a question for this whole shenanigan. Would you give? I don't know what. Do you like declare that for your work, or is that something completely different?
That's complicated, and I'll answer that
Awesome.
question. Okay. All right. Now I want to make one final note on this. We're really good at this. In fact, mathematically, all this comes down to is addition and subtraction, right? You add all these things up, where all of them come from, and then you subtract all of these, wherever they come from. Okay. So one last thing we want to do. You then have to work out, well, how much tax should I pay? There's your income tax. There's one extra thing. Do you remember I mentioned going to the hospital and GPs and that kind of thing? Does anyone remember there's an extra thing that comes with that?
Medicare.
There's a Medicare levy.
Obamacare.
Yeah, for them, public healthcare is a new crazy thing. Okay. Now it's worth pointing out. I'm writing this as an extra thing that you should write down as well, because your textbook is not that old, but it's old enough that the Medicare levy is incorrect. Your textbook will say the Medicare levy is 1.5%. It's not 1.5%. You want to know what it is?
2.
It's 2.
Is that good or bad? Good.
More money. It's good and bad. Okay. Now, I just want to point that out because you should know what the real Medicare levy is. But obviously, because the textbook was written with 1.5% in mind, when you're calculating, you'll use 1.5. Okay. The important thing is, like, just pay attention. Look at a question and see what it says. If you're in an assessment, if it's, you know, like this year's assessment, I'd really hope it says 2% because that's what it actually is.
Like, should we always write though, like the Medicare levy equal to 2%? Just to
Yeah,
make sure that
like I've talked about this before. When we were back in FM1 and FM2, right? Please don't just throw around numbers. Tell me what those are. Say Medicare levy, and then say 0.02 times whatever. Okay, or 2% because your calculator can do that. Okay, if you say what everything is, then you won't go wrong.
2% of everything you've earned.
Okay, so when you get to the Medicare levy questions that you have to answer, you'll see it's on your taxable income. Okay, so it's not on total income. We're always taxing this guy, which is why we call it taxable income. Right?